With the release of Sonic 3 and Jim Carrey's participation, I was reminded of how in interviews for Sonic 2, he mentioned that he would retire from acting, but there is another part of him that seemed to have retired as well. The bearded Jim, with an intense gaze and comments that many consider the words of a crazy person. Since 2017, his interviews have become more increasingly rare, and in recent years, he has limited himself almost exclusively to talking about Sonic. So, does his absence from interviews indicate that he's not as crazy as some people thought? Does his return to Sonic suggest that he's no longer as critical of Hollywood as he used to be? First of all, let me just clarify, when I talk about crazy Jim, I don't mean that he actually is crazy. A while ago, I made a video where, after researching and watching several interviews, I concluded that his craziness was, simply put, the adoption of a New Age philosophy influenced by Jeff Foster and Eckhart Tolle. This perspective holds that the individual does not exist in isolation but is part of a greater whole. Jim had already shown interest in these ideas before, but in 2017, some of his interviews went viral due to the sheer amount of beard he had, and of course, the way he expressed these beliefs, something that of course many people found strange. With that clarified, to determine whether he truly abandoned these ideas with his return to Hollywood, we first need to understand why he came out of retirement. And if you follow film or actor-related accounts, you've probably seen the clip that might give us a clue.
And, I bought a lot of stuff and I need the money.
Honestly, does anyone believe this isn't a joke? Well, the answer is yes. I was reading some comments and quite a few people actually support him, arguing that he's being honest and at least isn't making up excuses. However, it's also true that this year he managed to sell his mansion for $19 million, which reinforces the theory that he actually needed money. Honestly, this contrasts quite a bit with the famous quote from Crazy Jim. I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dream of so they can see that it's not the answer. Well, it seems that he did have everything he wanted. At least materially speaking, it's known that the mansion he sold wasn't his only property, not to mention the various expensive cars he's been seen in. If we were to stop at this information alone, we might think that Jim has abandoned his ideas and has gone back to valuing material wealth. But then, I saw another interview that made me doubt.
It's not really about the money. I joke about the money, but you can't be definite about these things. I said I'd like to retire, but, I think I was talking more about, power resting.
So, either Jim Carrey has abandoned his minimalist philosophy in theory and fully embraced materialism again, or he was simply joking in that interview. Even if it were the former, it's important to remember that when Jim started making waves online with his philosophy, he never actually got rid of all his properties or cars, he kept them. So maybe he can grow out his beard, make cryptic gestures in interviews, and talk about enlightenment without it necessarily meaning that he has completely renounced his wealth. Now, what about his criticism of Hollywood? Does returning for Sonic 3 make him a hypocrite? Especially when, in 2022, we all thought that would be the last time we'd see him on a screen.
I'm retiring, but...
No.
Yeah, probably.
Are you being serious or are you screwing with me?
I'm being fairly serious, yeah. I have enough.
The truth is that Jim Carrey's disillusionment with Hollywood didn't start just a couple of years ago. He had issues with the industry even before he was born from a rhino. As Marlon Wayans recently mentioned when talking about their time working together on In Living Color, Hollywood didn't want him, so they were cold on him, the network didn't want him, and Keenan saw Jim in the audition that Damon brought him to, and then was bigging him up. Keenan was like, he's hilarious, and then from there he put him on. Years later, at the height of his fame, Carrey admitted to The Hollywood Reporter that his intention with Ace Ventura in 1994 was not join Hollywood, it was destroy it. Like take a gigantic sledgehammer to the leading men and to all the seriousness. However, over the time, that battle seems to have emotionally drained him. I just didn't want to be in the business anymore. I didn't like what was happening, the corporations taking over and all that. And maybe it's because I felt pulled toward a different type of creative outlet And I really like the control of painting, of not having a committee in the way telling me what the idea must be to appeal to a 4-quadrant whatever. Even after all that, Sonic 3 brought him back, becoming his highest grossing film, surpassing Bruce Almighty. Ironically, the same industry he critiqued made him the highest paid actor of his time with The Cable Guy, and he amassed a great fortune from several other films. In the Sonic 3 interview, he also stated that with today's technology, he would like to reprise his role as the Grinch. In other words, not only he's back with Sonic, but he's also open to other projects in the future. What does this say about his beliefs regarding the industry? Well, while his relationship with Hollywood has been somewhat contradictory, there's also a thread of consistency in his disdain for it. Since the 2000s, Carrey significantly reduced his appearances compared to the 90s. In fact, after his 2017 interviews, his filmography was limited to the series Kidding, the Sonic movies, and Dark Crimes. Moreover, his presence in mainstream media has also declined drastically. For this video, I tried to find recent interviews or podcast appearances, and after spending 2 hours drowning in ads trying to find something interesting about him, the real conclusion is that YouTube is making a strong case for YouTube Premium, but also that over the past 8 years, there have been very few interviews, almost all related to promoting Sonic. Because of this, at least in this regard, I don't see him as a hypocrite. Clearly, he is accustomed to a lifestyle above the average and may need to make movies occasionally to sustain it. But his criticism remains intact. He participates less and less, choosing only projects that interest him or involve people he enjoys working with. It wouldn't be surprising if he retired again for at least a few years, as his exhaustion is evident. Other actors have done the same, like Daniel Day-Lewis, who stepped away from acting in 1997 after The Boxer to become a shoemaker. He moved to Italy and apprenticed under renowned craftsman Stefano Wemmer. Years later, he returned, only to announce another retirement in 2017, though it was recently reported that he will return to film to work with his son. Joaquin Phoenix also retired in 2008, though in his case it was all part of a mockumentary where he pretended to leave acting to pursue a career in hip-hop. As we know, his career moved forward, much to the disappointment of those who wanted more of his rapper persona instead of Joker 2. So, it's possible that for at least a few years, we'll see Jim focusing more on his political cartoons than on Sonic 10 or a Grinch sequel. And if not, if he comes back multiple times, he can always say it was a mockumentary or that he was just discovering his new passion for fixing shoes. After reviewing his past, his interviews, and his behavior in recent years, has Jim Carrey truly left behind that strange face that surprised everyone a few years ago? At first glance, it seems like he has. He no longer promotes his new age philosophy in erratic ways, and he also returned to the Hollywood industry he used to criticize, perhaps to maintain his lifestyle. But in my opinion, as we have seen, this isn't anything new for Jim. Even when he was more vocal about his criticisms or his views on money, he still owned a 20 million mansion. What has changed is that each year he becomes less involved with acting and more engaged in other forms of expressions like his cartoons. He gives fewer interviews, but every now and then he returns to the public eye at key moments, like when Will Smith's slap at the Oscars happened or during the US elections. Simply put, as he himself has said, he's tired and only reappears when the situation, whether in the media or the arts, calls for it. So, deep down, he's still the same hippie who inspired hundreds of self-improvement TikToks. Only now, due to his absence, they have to recycle all interviews, at least until he loses his razor again or Will Smith slaps Chris Rock once more, whichever comes first.